One to another episode of the Camper Report. We have got a long-awaited guest. I've wanted for quite a while now to have him on. I finally got him on. Brandon King. Am I saying your name right? That's
It's
Brandon King
close
from the
enough.
Knox.
Kane.
Okay. Oh, Kane. Sorry, I got that all wrong in the description. I
Oh,
couldn't.
it's all. You're
My
not the
bad.
only one. Most people do, honestly. So it transitions really easy to the other one. It just rolls off the tongue the same way. So it's
My
all good.
bad. Yeah, I was listening to one of your streams today. I was like, what's his name? And then I listened to your intro and I thought it said Brandon King. And I'm like, but no. Anyway, so we've got Brandon Kane in the house from Hawk's Nest, a Seahawks content creator. If you haven't heard of him, go check him out. All of his links to his Twitter and his YouTube are in the description. But yes, very, very interesting Seahawks content creator. If you want that type of news, then go there because he's in tune with all of the Seahawks news that happens every day. But I'm a Niners fan, so I had to have him on kind of as a rival guy to the show. So, how are you doing today? Excited to talk NFL and Seahawks with you.
Me too, man. In this many ways, this is a part of the year, but for some that gets quieted down. But for me, it really kind
Mm,
of ratchets up because I get really geeky about the draft and looking at all these prospects
yeah.
and really diving into them. So I love that part of it. And obviously, we all, maybe not you guys because you guys are a little more tight in the cap. We're kind of tight in the cap. So you ideally would love to be thinking about free agency, but
hmm
a little bit, with an eye towards that as well, I guess, in combination.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start looking at the draft. I'm kind of still a little bit starstruck since that NFC Championship game, but you've had a lot more time to kind of take in all of the draft prospects because your team was out a few rounds earlier. We're not going to talk about that though. Um, so, anyways, let's get to the first topic. Obviously, the title of the show is Can Aaron Rodgers handle the pressure of New York if he were to go to the Jets? But we're not going to get to that yet. We're going to get to our first topic, which is going to start off with a little bit of Seahawks talk. Are the Seahawks making a mistake if they re-sign Geno Smith, or I said Geno, to a long-term deal? And what are your thoughts on what type of deal they should re-sign him to? Do you believe that you guys have your QB of the future on the roster, which is what I was meaning?
Yeah.
Personally, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
I was just going to say Geno Smith, free agent, just, yeah, that's, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to allow him to be a free agent if the negotiations don't go through because I do think the franchise tag is a part of this that could come into play. I'm sure you're seeing the same thing popping off right now with the Daniel Jones stuff and the talk of what his camp is wanting. And for my money, this is a personal thing. I think the quarterback contracts have gotten far out of whack in the NFL,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I think that there is a argument to be made that this carrying force that says, well, you have to have the quarterback to put the cape on, flapping in the wind, flying through the crowds, faster than a speeding bullet, doing everything for your team. Maybe you don't need, yes, it's nice to have one of those, but first and foremost, maybe there's only a few set of those guys rather than us paying, National League football wise, 15 of those guys. Maybe there is only 2 or 3 of those guys truly. And that the
Mhm.
rest all do kind of fit around in the same stack. It's just in a varied level of that stack. And then what is the value of those guys? Well, to me, if you're not at the top of the top, then you should be more in a mid-tier deal. That kind of deal that doesn't exist right now in football and doesn't look like it's frankly going to materialize this offseason. When you're hearing Daniel Jones camp asking for 45, when you hear Geno Smith turning down 30 million a year, it means we're probably going to see these numbers continue to go up. And I'm pushing back against it. I look at what Geno did this year. I look at what Brock Purdy was able to accomplish with the Niners. I look at what Jalen Hurts has accomplished with the Eagles. I look around the league and I see that there's conditions that can happen where you have a quarterback who may have limitations, yet they can still really perform really well if you've stacked up a great supporting cast around them in more ways than one.
Mhm. I completely agree. I think, like you said, we're at the age now. I think even though it shouldn't be that they're getting paid this much, we're at the age now where, like the age of football now, where you have all these quarterbacks. I think basically, like you said, every quarterback is getting overpaid except for a Patrick Mahomes or a Jalen Hurts, which is about to get paid. I think he's going to get paid a lot of money. I think he's definitely not overpaid. But like you saying, like Kirk Cousins, I think his deal is like $40 million a year.
right?
I think Geno Smith can match up with a Kirk Cousins type. Like, if you're looking at those two guys' credentials, Kirk Cousins made it to the first round of the playoffs this year. Geno Smith, first round of the playoffs this year. And the Seahawks were playing a harder team in the 49ers. So if you're looking at their credentials, I think Geno Smith has done just as much as Kirk Cousins. So if you're Geno Smith and you're kind of on the negotiation table, you're saying, you know, even though the market shouldn't be this way, I still really am worth $40 million because that's what Kirk Cousins, which is, I believe in this, they're in the same tier. He's worth $40 million a year. So I should be worth that too.
Yeah, I don't begrudge Geno Smith asking for that money or thinking that he's earned that money, or that there would be somebody in the league that would pay him that if he was a free agent, or if the Seattle traded him, if they franchise tagged him. I can completely understand him saying, yeah, I got the money coming. My problem comes into it from a standpoint of proper team building. And you look at these contracts given to most of these quarterbacks, and a lot of times it's situations where the teams are giving it out of desperation or laziness. Desperation because they just can't quite find that quarterback. Laziness because it's so easy to just go to this one spot and go, okay, you be the savior, as opposed to having to make all of the right decisions down the line, from your defensive line, your offensive line, to how you segment out the money, which is harder, which is more complicated, which requires you to be right more often than just being right or wrong on one key given decision. So I think it's those two things that really push this forward. And I think the smart, forward-thinking general manager is the one that either attempts A, to find the middle tier deal that has yet to exist, or B, continue to just operate under the right blueprint to going and winning a Super Bowl if your name's not Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, which is having a young quarterback on a rookie deal, and take advantage of that time.
So do you think, since there's an argument to be made on the Seahawks side of things, like, you're pretty old, do you think, so what would the deal look like? Like 3, 4, 5 years? Probably 3, I would say 2, 3 years.
It would be
old.
Yeah, it would be 3 because he is old. He's 32. So to me, it's a 3-year deal. When we get down to what the cost is, here's what I think it's going to boil down to. I think Geno's camp's coming in and asked for 40. Seattle's offered 30. 35 would be the obvious in-between point. Seattle's probably going to grind him down to 32.5 on a 3-year deal. That's too much money. I wouldn't want to pay that much money to him. 25 a year is the top I would go in a 3-year deal. You're missing the 4th year to massage the numbers out, which means the cost is automatically going to even increase, even with the bonus money and when you pair it. Unless you're just able to guarantee all the money and no bonus money, which he's not going to want to do that. So I think that's just a bit too high for me. I don't like even paying the 25, to be honest with you, but I could say, oh, you're worth that. Then I can at least get you in that mid-tier deal. 50 is the top, 25 a mid. That sounds right to me. You're right. He is worth the 40, but if we want to be where the team should be trying to operate, that's the right spot.
I completely agree. I think one question, and I think this will kind of key into our next topic of the show, and kind of, I think like the Seahawks could try to re-sign Geno to a 3-year deal and then get a guy in the 2nd round like Hendon Hooker. And so this brings me to my next question. If you were the GM of the Seahawks, what would your draft strategy be this year? And I think one of the things that I'll add to that is, I think you could go for a lower, like a quarterback who has a lot of potential, but injuries, for example, or age. Hendon Hooker has had injuries and age has held him back. Injuries and age has, like, they're a 1st round talent, but they are going to probably get picked in the 2nd round because they've had stuff holding them back in their college career. So what is your strategy? And that's just something to think about.
Yeah, I've got a kind of 1, 2, 3 priority list on this one. Priority 1 is that first, let me build this in. It's my belief 3 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 4 picks. It's my belief that you're going to see 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 10 picks. It's my belief that one of Arizona or Chicago will be trading back out of their pick, or in Chicago's case, or in Arizona's case, trade their current starting quarterback and then just take a quarterback. So I'm going to go ahead and lean hard on this. I feel pretty strongly about this. That leaves Seattle with one of a choice, I believe, of Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, 2 of the best players in this draft. Not just best defensive players, 2 of the best players in this draft, bar none. So I'll just take one of those 2, whichever one falls to me at that point, and call it a day. If that doesn't happen, then the second priority for me would be to try to trade back a little bit. move back some spots, pick up extra future first round picks if I can to a team that's quarterback hungry and wants to move up to number 5. Priority 3 would then be taking a quarterback, which is like the one that remains, so to speak.
Yeah, quarterback needy teams. I believe the Colts are behind you guys, right, at pick number 5, right? Is
I
that
think you got everything. You got 7 with the Raiders. You got the Colts at 9. You got the
9?
Texans at 12 if they do pass on a
Ooh,
quarterback on the front end. You've got there's another team I'm not thinking of. There's a few. All those teams basically from just about 7 onwards to about 13 are all kind of theoretically looking for a quarterback. And that's the target you trade back because you move back to, let's just call it 11. That's going to be an extra first next year, probably a second and a third this year, or at least just a second this year, as far as the usual
right.
trade chart on that. So to me, that's the worthwhile to do. The problem is you'll see when you start to look at this draft is that the tier 1 is not very deep. So once
Yeah.
you get to pick 5, if you don't have a Carter, you don't have an Anderson, the best 2 quarterbacks are off the board. I'm not a big Tyree Wilson guy. I'm not a big Miles Murphy guy. Not at 5. They're good guys, but just a little bit later on,
So I think let's quickly, you mentioned the Texans at 12. I know that DeMeco Ryans, obviously their head coach now. I mean, if you're a new head coach, you want to start off with a bang, maybe buy yourself some time, and that could be an interesting thing as well. Another thing that I think maybe the Seahawks could do is, obviously, if you're trading back from, let's say, 5 to 12, then you're probably getting a first round in next year's draft. I would think so.
Right.
So what you could do is you could hope that, the Texans do bad this year, which they could, and then you get somebody like Caleb Williams in next year's draft, who is a generational talent or supposed to be a generational talent. So that's another thing that they have so much flexibility this year.
You took it in the right logical
Crazy.
place, though. That's the right
Crazy.
the logical step you took off of that is exactly what I'm thinking with this, which is that it's also then the forward thinking point to the future quarterback next year, where you're gambling the dice, rolling the dice that one of those teams,
Yeah.
be it a Raiders, be it your point on the Texans, and you have DeMeco Ryans, so maybe he's drawn because the Texans have 2 first round picks in the first 13 picks. Maybe they don't go quarterback with that first pick. Maybe they go Anderson there or Carter there because DeMeco Ryans is the defensive guy is going to want what? Obviously a defensive player, right?
Yeah.
Defensive head coaches want defensive, especially on a team like the Texans that's pretty bereft of defensive talent as it stands right now. So I think that that's definitely a way I would be willing to go. I'd love to roll that dice. We just did it with the Broncos. Paid off pretty well for us.
Yeah.
Look at the other teams in the first round, right? Lions made that move with the Rams. Rams aren't liking that now. They just handed the Lions a top 10 pick. The Eagles last year with the Saints to go up and get Trevor Penning. Now they get that first round pick from the Saints this year. Saints didn't have a very good year. They feel, the guys went to the Super Bowl. They're going to have a top 14 pick in this upcoming draft. So I like those kind of moves if I'm the team moving back. Not the team moving up, but the team moving back.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just scary to think, like you're talking about the Eagles. It's that move that the Eagles made was like that kind of saved their bacon because they have so much talent going to be leaving through free agency this year. They're going to need those picks. And yeah, that was a good move. And it's the same thing with the Seahawks general manager. Everyone at the time was thinking, well, this is a pretty good deal for the Broncos. You've got Russell Wilson. The one other question that I want to quickly ask a Seahawks fan, now that the season is over, did you always believe that Russell Wilson deal was going to be a good deal?
Did I always believe it would be a good deal? Yeah. Honestly, I knew it was going to be a good deal for us because but there was also a little bit of the understanding of like, this isn't going to work long-term with Russ, one way or another, this has got to go, I didn't think it was going to be a complete utter failure for Russ in Denver. I did raise some alarm bells going back to last year for these, because, obviously the Denver fans come into my chat and they're like, like, okay, pound the chest. But I did tell him beware because he was going to a condition that was ripe for the doom point for me with Russell in Denver was really this point. You have a team over the last 2 seasons that was 26th and 28th in pass block efficiency rate. You have a guy in Russell Wilson who tends to be one of the guys who holds onto the ball longer than any player in the NFL at the quarterback position per snap basis, something like 3 seconds. Okay, so those don't go well in tandem with each other. A quarterback with a tendency that wants to hold the ball and an offensive line that can't pass block very long. They're a run blocking unit at their core. And that was going to bring about as much of the ruin as anything else offensively for him, that was going to draw it out. And so, that wasn't completely shocking, Misi, but I didn't think he was going to fall completely on his face. But yes, you get 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, players in addition to that. That's a mighty haul for a guy that was, again, not a 27-year-old kid, 33-year-old guy that was showing signs at that point as well. Of, at the very least, the most ardent Russell supporter would tell you there are signs of age here. He is slowing down. He is getting a little thicker. Maybe the arm strength's not quite as strong as it was when he was younger. Kind of played out that way.
Yeah, they definitely, the Seahawks, like him, Howie Roseman, earned my respect, definitely, because Howie Roseman, especially with the Eagles, had made some questionable picks in the in the past with picking, I think it was in 2019, picking JJ Arcega-Whiteside over AJ Brown. And then those 2 GMs definitely have redeemed themselves. And these 2 fan bases, Seahawks and Eagles, they've got to be thanking God because they're both in a very good position. But anyways, let's get to first the chat, and then there's some people saying hi in there, and then we'll get to the next topic. Mariah Faithful Lee comes in saying she's clapping, and then Gina repping the Bay production says, "Hey Mariah," and then she says, "Woohoo in the house." So,
what's up, ladies?
But let's get to a few other topics, and this is something that I didn't expect this to be very much of a rivalry this year, 49ers and Seahawks, because I thought the Seahawks were going to be not a very good team, and I don't think I was I was not in the unpopular crowd. A lot of people thought that, but it ended up being a very good season for both teams. And so my question is, we met in the playoffs. There was already a lot of rivalry in the season, but then we met in the playoffs, and that added even more heat because it's winner goes home, So that was even, so the rivalry picked up after we met in the playoffs. That heat turned up. So my question to you is this rivalry between the 49ers and Seahawks at an all-time high after this year?
I think it's a kind of a 2 different thing. Its establishment is it at the all-time high where it's as fierce between the 2 teams? I don't think it's as fierce as when you had Harbaugh and Carroll hating each other. When you had both of those 2 different, Crabtree and Sherman going back and forth, guys on Twitter going back and forth constantly, put an extra plate in the weight room on, they're there was a lot of there was a lot of woofing going on back then. So that was a little bit of a different edged point. And those were 2 different teams that were kind of built even a little different than even the modern teams on this. Those Niner teams, maybe you feel like this team this year is a better overhaul than those team. I don't know. I might make an argument those teams might have been even a little bit better. I would make an argument, for instance, that the 2013 conference championship was probably the true Super Bowl of that season. That those were your 2 best teams in the NFL that year. So what I like about it is that this has been able to maintain from that 10-year stretch. And that's what's going to give this thing teeth in the long term, rather than something that just kind of comes by and then fades away really quickly. And so it's more of a reestablishment this year for me with this rivalry. And it's really a wonderful thing to see. Because look, here's the thing. Okay. Let's just be real with this. Okay. Can I tell you something real? You don't got any, we don't got any Rams in here, right? No Cardinal fans?
No. Sometimes we do, once in a while, we'll get a few guys that I know, but no, not really. No.
Arizona fans are, God bless them, just not very active. And I lived in Arizona. I was in Phoenix for a year when I went to quote unquote college. I was going to college. But one doesn't go to Phoenix to go to college. And they're just they're kind of into their other stuff, going to the lake, got the sun, we're living life. And then LA to a lesser degree is kind of some similar stuff where they've had 2 franchises fail out there because the fan bases didn't support them. Right. Oakland went there, failed out. LA's already been there once, failed out because everybody goes to move to LA. Nobody's really from there. And then number 2, nobody really kind of cares about the team. All of them are really Raider fans at the end of the day, more than anything else. So look, I know with the Niner fans, I got a fan base that really loves their team, that there's a history there of it, that it's vibrant. It's right down the road from us. So kind of sister cities a little bit, as they like to say with stuff. So it's it just feels kind of natural and right in a lot of respects. And we're new to the NFC West, having just only been here in the last 20 years or so. So it's good too from that, because we had some great old rivalries back in our AFC West days that got kind of lost moving over here and just hasn't really been established. Like I said, it's hard to establish it with the Rams and the Cardinals when the fan bases are like, yeah, okay, you beat us. I mean, whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like, I remember last year, NFC Championship game, 49ers go to the Rams and they take over that stadium 2 times. It was the last week of the season and the NFC Championship game. There were more 49ers fans than Rams fans. So that's a very good point. I think the Seahawks and the 49ers, like you said, it's how it's always supposed to, like, these two fan bases have always been like even more like have always been fighting amongst each other more than like the 49ers and the Cardinals. I never really that many times will see Twitter wars against like a 49ers fan and a Cardinals fan, but I always see Seahawks fans and 49ers fans going at it. So it's just, I don't know exactly, because you're older than me. I mean, when I really started getting into football was like 2012. But when did this rivalry really start? Was it like early 2000s or?
So what's really caused this is the Harbaugh Carroll thing is really the cause of this, kind of. So
Okay.
Back in college, there's this moment that happened between Harbaugh and Harbaugh. I call him Harbaugh. I don't know why I always call him like I'm from Chicago, but Harbaugh and Carroll. Harbaugh was at Stanford. Carroll was at USC. Carroll was running the shop, right? Winning national titles. Harbaugh was the new guy on the scene who was up and rising with the Stanford team. So he goes in against USC on this given game, boat races him. End of the game, Carroll's pissed. He's fuming. They're walking out for the post game handshake. And Carroll handshakes him and he says, "What's your deal, man?" And you can find this. There's actually videotape of this
Really?
interaction.
Okay.
So this isn't just like rumored. This actually, you can watch it. And it's pretty, there's a chilliness to them. And from there was born this rivalry from there. So Carroll goes to Seattle. Harbaugh reportedly turns down less money with Miami to go to San Francisco. And now you have these two guys playing each other twice a season with that built-in hatred coming from college. And then the teams take on the personalities of their coach. So that Niner team was going to take on that ferocity of Harbaugh's spirit towards Carroll, and Carroll's players the same kind of way. And it just started to kind of, I think it grew from there.
The 2013 season, when you guys beat us in the NFC Championship game, I remember like that was one of the first years I actually started watching football. I was really young. But even when like I saw the Seahawks playing the 49ers, like it didn't matter. I didn't even really know who they were, but I just knew that I hated them. Like, and that's like, that was just the nature, I guess, of a 49ers fan. I don't know. I mean, my brothers were like, "Oh yeah, they're big rivals." I was like, "Okay." And ever since that 2013 championship game, I've never liked them because I always felt that could have gone a really different way. But yeah, definitely good to see that rivalry revive a little bit. I have a quick question for you though. When did you actually start your YouTube channel? Because I haven't scrolled down that long.
I think it was just over 4 years ago now, like 4 years and like a month or something.
Dang. And the great thing about like this rivalry before we move on is we've both had some really good teams and some legends on both of our teams. The Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Richard Sherman, like Legion of Boom versus the 49ers, really good defense. So it's a rivalry that is never fails to entertain, and these teams have met in the playoffs many times. You talk about rivalries like the Patriots and the Bills, like that's a rivalry, but those two teams haven't really like met in the playoffs that many times. They haven't been in games where like they're going against each other and it's super high stake. The 49ers and the Seahawks have had those type of games. So that's why I think it makes it even a bigger rivalry, like the Seahawks. I mean, it's like the Eagles and Cowboys, Packers and Bears type of thing. So
100%. I mean, this is a thing too with West Coast. You know, we get accused being West Coast to being a little bit, you know, on the laid back style versus the East Coast. This is how it is out the East Coast. These guys get at it. You know, these fan bases get at it when they're that close. And it's just a natural, organic thing. And it's something to really be embraced. As long as it ain't people overstepping the line and just being belligerent, just for the hell of being belligerent, but it's good. It's good for it's not only great for the sport, it's great for I think both franchises in propelling us forward, and people remember it. People will remember those rivalry games between the Seahawks and 49ers like they remember the Ravens and Steelers from the 2000s and some of those games that were played. And I think that sets us aside from other teams that you mentioned, like the Bills or New England, is that when we had Harbaugh and Carroll here, or now when you have Shanahan and Carroll here, you've got old school football going on both sides of the football. We're going to come at you. You're going to come at us. This ain't going to be a lot of fancy stuff. Can you stop us? And that's always going to also appeal always to that hard nosed kind of way that you'd ideally love to see your football teams. But we're playing a lot of patty cake now in football, right?
Yeah.
With a team like the Patriots, it's just peppering the ball over. Check down. Exactly. Just little 3-yard passes and dumps here and dumps there. And so it's, I get it that's where the game's going, but there's nothing like good old fashioned line them up and hat on a hat. Let's go.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we had this in the topics, and I wanted to quickly just ask you this question and we can move on. But
yeah, we're good.
Do you think Bobby Wagner returns to the Seahawks? He got cut today.
He wants to go to a winner. So I mean, I guess it depends on where his head's at as far as how he thinks Seattle's in a position to go be a winner at this point. Which, I mean, I think we got to the playoffs last year. Theoretically, we could step forward, but I mean, let's take the bottom line here. Stepping forward, it's you re-sign Geno, because if you lose him, you're not stepping forward. Well, then how much more else are you able to add in free agency, especially if now you add Bobby, you just signed Phil Haynes, you just re-signed Jason Myers, you just signed Nick Bellore, a special teams guy. We didn't have a ton of cap space anyway. And then when it's nice that you have all these draft picks, but our draft picks are going to account for like $16 million this year off the cap with all those picks. So it all kind of goes away. You're not adding to the team that was 9-8. What are you putting him in that position to make him feel like if he's going to go into the last 1 or 2 years of his career, that you're putting him in that true position to go get a championship? I'd love to think so. But to me, for us to go and be on the level of where you guys were, I think we got a little over our skis this year, quite frankly. I think we're a talented team and we're on the rise. But, the bottom line was we were dealing with $44 million of dead money on our cap, which is the largest dead money hit that a franchise has ever sustained into an NFL season.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Because you lost $26 million on Russell's deal. You released Bobby. You released Carlos Dunlap. You take the cumulative of it on a couple of other ones that you had to cut out there because you were changing from 4-3 to a 3-4. So you had to cut out the 4-3 guys now.
Yeah.
You end up with that amount of dead money. And so that was a substantial hit. You're not going to have that this year. But again, at the same point in time, you're still kind of up against the cap with some of the other deals you've signed. So I think we could be marginally better. I don't know if we're truly yet at that stage next year. I think the year after maybe, but I don't know if we're truly next year at that Super Bowl window starts to open kind of phase. Like it's open for you guys right now. You guys you're in your window.
I'm going to throw out a name, and maybe the coach is going to repel Bobby Wagner, but maybe the Chargers. I don't know. That team seems like they kind of could be good if they can just get the coaching situation right. I think they should have fired him, but that's just my opinion.
I would have gone after Sean Payton. I would have fired him and said, Sean, come on in. Sean would have been all over Herbert. He would have been all over Herbert.
I don't understand why they did that. I'm not sure. Like, that type of coach only really goes on the market like every 5 to 10 years. And now you're just going to let him, like, you're just going to stay with your old dude who really hasn't done anything.
The problem is the hire in the first place. You have a young, dynamic quarterback. You go get an offensive-minded head coach to guide the man through. You don't get a defensive-minded coach who's coming into your team who now you need to flip all of your personnel around in order to accommodate his new scheme. And there's a lot of talk about right now the Fangio cover 2 shell not working in the NFL because it's so proliferated. And people going, well, if you don't have Fangio, you just can't run it.
Right.
But the problem really isn't that. The problem comes into play is that teams flip on a dime to the scheme and they don't change out to accommodate the personnel to the scheme for what it needs. It's very specific about what it requires. And it's not traditional in its asking from the front 7 to the back end of things. And that's where, it's a weird one for me.
Yeah. Well, let's move on a little bit. So let's get to a little bit of Aaron Rodgers. Let's get to actually the really the title of the show. Aaron Rodgers, obviously a lot of talk around him, like, will he stay, will he retire? Will they trade him? They could get a lot of picks roll with Jordan Love, compensate, like kind of fully embrace that rebuild. I've always heard a saying like you can't really have a rebuild with a veteran quarterback who wants to win. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers wants to win. And I think if you're the Green Bay Packers, right, you're kind of held back by like, do we want to fully rebuild or do we want to keep Aaron Rodgers around and kind of try to semi-win a championship every year? Me personally, I would trade him and rebuild. But if Aaron Rodgers were to go to the Jets, is he not built for the criticism that the New York Jets fans throw at their QBs? And that's my second part to you is like, in New York, you're going to get a lot of criticism. The media spotlight is on teams in New York and LA. So you're going to get a lot more criticism there. So, I mean, we know the personality of Aaron Rodgers. He's a laid back type of dude who doesn't really like getting hassled by the media a ton. We've seen it in the past. So what is your thoughts on this one?
Another kind of terribly complicated situation, partly because of his contract and that he has to take less money if he's going to go somewhere else, which means that he gets to have a say on where he gets to go. It's not a matter of there are 32 NFL teams you can go to. It's where he wants to go. So he has to give that impetus to the Packers to do that. Would the Jets be one of those teams to do it? I don't kind of see how. He doesn't seem a guy to me who's been very fond about living in Favre's shadow in the time that he did, number one, but as well, he's already started to take the same Favrean path of, will I retire? Won't I retire? I mean, I know this might be a little bit before your time, but this was Brett for years, waffling back and forth between this decision and driving the franchise utterly crazy until they finally did what? Offloaded him to the New York Jets. So is Aaron Rodgers going to want to go take the same path of the guy whose shadow that he didn't want to live in to only now further sort of stamp that in further at that point? He's a guy that is mindful. We're in the diva quarterback age. And part of being in the diva quarterback age is that these guys are highly mindful about their brand and their whole Q rating and their whole post football, all that. So he's going to be mindful about that. He's not going to want the connection to Favre. He's never really wanted it in that way just sort of tacitly speaking. And so I think, no, he wouldn't be a fit for the Jets as far as the media. No, he wouldn't answer. He would just ignore them though. I mean, he'd work around that. He just wouldn't engage them, and he'd say, deal with it. What are you going to do? But what he would look at with the Jets in this though, from just off my base point of this was because he has a say on where he goes. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams. There aren't a lot of quarterback needy teams ready to go to a Super Bowl right now, or that are giving him a better place than what he has in Green Bay at this moment. Right. Raiders. That's not an improvement. The Panthers, that's not an improvement for him. The Washington Commanders, no way. They really want to move him to an AFC team at the end of the day, right? The Packers want to get him out. So then it's got to be maybe an AFC team that he agrees to.
You think the Patriots maybe? I mean, that's not even an upgrade, really.
Belichick and Rodgers? I mean,
I don't know.
I can't see that one myself either on that one.
If Tom Brady couldn't handle Belichick, then Rodgers, I definitely think can't handle
it wouldn't work. So, it wouldn't work. The first time Rodgers rolled his eyes, he'd go get Mac Jones off the bench and be like, bring him back. I'm coming back. But that, it starts to really go down fast if you go, okay, AFC teams, okay, not this, not this, not this, not this. And you get down to like 2 or 3 teams. The Jets are one of those teams that would be technically, you put a quarterback there in that division with them. They have a road to going and winning that division with Rodgers there. But I think it would come down to him basically just ignoring the media. He wouldn't engage him. You wouldn't be getting him having some tete-a-tete every week where, it's like the media going at him and he's coming back at them and it's a bunch of little snippy sound bites.
Yeah.
That's not going to be it. He just probably would be like, F it. I'm going to play one more year. If they don't like it, he'll do, he's from Cal. Him and Marshall are friends. Maybe he just goes into it and he's like, I'm just here so I don't get fined, And he's made so much money. He don't like, he's at that FU point on the money space. Like, what are you going to do to me? I played 20 years. My body hurts. I'm just trying to get a Super Bowl. So I do think it's a possibility because of the fact there's just no possibilities, not because it's a great fit or he would flourish there or because he would take to the media so well. But I do think there's just not, at the end of the day, what really does probably happen here at the end of the day is he goes back to Green Bay.
I would say so. I mean, like you said, older man, he's that probably doesn't want to move around a ton. I mean, he doesn't really seem like I don't know. He doesn't really seem like the type of person like Tom Brady. You get this feel about him. He has this energy of like, I want to win and I'm going to move anywhere in the United States to try to win a championship. I'm going to move my family. I'm going to do everything to try to win a championship. He could have stayed he could have chosen to not move his family, stayed with the New England Patriots. Instead, he goes to the Buccaneers. I don't really get that sense from Aaron Rodgers. He's a different personality. He's kind of a laid back kind of guy. So I don't really get that sense from him. Another thing, if you're a team looking at Aaron Rodgers, I think this brings down his stock really a lot. If you're a team looking at Aaron Rodgers, the unknown of him retiring, like you said, any day is really going to scare teams off. So if you're the Packers, do you even like want to trade him? Because like you want to trade him for a certain price, right? But what if that certain price isn't there because so many teams are scared away by the possibility every day of retiring, if you know what I mean. So
I think if you put them under the lie detector test, the Packers front office would want to trade him at this point.
okay.
I think they're held back by the fact the dead money hit would be too substantial unless he is willing to somewhat renegotiate the contract on the front end of that before the deal, even if it's to renegotiate back the money with the team that he's being traded to.
Mm-hmm.
But find a way for them to lower that down in order so that they don't. It's a monstrous hit if they move him. It's really it's bigger than the Wilson hit, I believe, from last year. If they try to move him in a trade that Seattle took at $26 million, so you got to find a way for them. But I think if they like where Jordan's at, they feel good about Jordan. There's this, like you said, there's a feeling with, I think you're kind of intimating this a little bit. There's a feeling with Aaron Rodgers there a little bit of he's checked out. I kind of felt this last year when he started already talking about retirement. It's like when those guys start to talk about retirement, the foot's already halfway out the door. And if it's halfway out the door, you might as well just go fully. And so he's at that point, in my opinion, where it's time for you've had a long run of it, but look, that money, it's a lot of money to turn down, right? He's got that. I mean, it's a big payday, another big payday for him. It's, and maybe he's looking at like, I might not have as many of the endorsement stuff post career. This may be better the time where I got to get mine while the getting's good, because it ain't going to be there tomorrow.
That's a good point. Another thing I'll bring up, like kind of bringing us back to the spotlight, like of big cities back to the spotlight of like players under the spotlight and under the scrutinization because they're in a big city where all the media is. I go back to really Russell Westbrook, who now is on the Clippers, but he was on the Lakers. That team gets a big spotlight, and he was really pretty good before he went to the Lakers. And really in all of sports, like there are just players that just sometimes cannot handle the spotlight of a team that gets scrutinized all the time. And so that's why that's got to scare off Aaron Rodgers as well. I mean, it's got to scare off any player of, okay, if I have this one bad game, am I going to get scrutinized for the rest of my life just because it's with a higher media covered team? I don't know. So that's got to scare him off as well. So
it definitely could. I think in regards to Westbrook, I stand with, I think he had a game that was not going to age well. Not in an era that was moving to more of needing to have an ability to hit your 3-point shots and not everything being about, driving. And look, he left some of those teams where he couldn't sit there and stat pad all day and let guys give him rebounds for his triple doubles. And now he's got to go play honest to God basketball when it's like, it ain't as great on that, and it's like, you're right. In the respect of Aaron can kind of run and hide from some of the flaws here out in Green Bay, because he isn't going to be under that scrutiny as much. And that I'm sure at his point in time in his career, going to a New York market and having it, I mean, it was already pretty hot this last couple of years with some of these stories that have come out about him, right? Like that guy should lose his Hall of Fame vote, and did he get his shot, and then immunized, and then, just, it was like, and now we got the darkness retreat, it's like, it's sort of just, I'm exhausted by it. It's like, we were talking at the top of the show about quarterback value. I want to go back to the days where the quarterback was like he's always been a little bit separate of the team, but not to this like, they ride on some magical steed above everybody, kind of
diva,
outlook on
for
things.
sure. Yeah, that's something that he definitely is. Yes. So
I'm over it. I want the good old, like, rub some dirt on it. Like, get me back on the field, coach. I don't care if it's broken. I want a little bit more of just that less of like, is a nail out of place here? Is it, no.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, like, so, not to get off on too much of a rabbit trail here, but he went on Serge Ibaka's cooking show. I can't remember what it's called, but Serge Ibaka is a NBA player. He has a cooking show and he interviews players basically while eating food. And I did not like Aaron Rodgers, not like, just doesn't interact with people. And it's like, do you really want that type of player on your team? Like, just not a leader, like you said, will go off by himself, like kind of has that personality of I can do whatever I want. Like, so I don't know. Do you really want somebody like that on your team? I wouldn't. So
I
yeah,
think it's the same spirit. Look, I saw it in Russell Grow. You saw it in Cam Newton. You
yeah,
see it in there's a variety of guys out there that you can kind of see it in when you see it. And I don't know if I can exactly tangibly say it's this and this and this and this. You just kind of know it when you see it. And it's a feeling of a guy separate from the team. You can feel his ego literally as he's walking past, it
yeah,
knocks you across the face as
yeah.
they're walking past you. You're going, Jesus, dude, really? Like take it down a notch, and it's to me grown. It's in that thing where now, the quarterbacks just keep getting inflated over these last few years. And this is where it's to the point where it's time to pop. It's gotten
Hmm.
too much. Yes, there's a point of them being valuable. Yes, there's a point of them having that impact. But for my money, it's Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, and I'm not sure even at Allen at this point. It's those three
Hmm.
guys, and the rest of the guys that we're talking about across the sport are just kind of, varying levels of good across the board outside of that. But it's those three that are their sort of the difference makers as it stands right now, in my opinion. And there's not many others outside of that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Joseph Camperman, we could spend a lot of time on that topic, but let's move on. Joseph Camperman, my brother, coming in, so thank you for supporting. Rodgers isn't one of those people who would go for an analyst gig, in my opinion. I completely
Yeah,
agree. Not that
agreed.
type of personality.
No,
Um, he would spend his retired days in a darkness retreat.
no,
So
he's gonna be just doing ayahuasca one day, mushrooms the next.
yeah, I
Bit of this, bit
remember.
of that.
I remember hearing that last year and I just laughed so hard. I was like, dang.
See, it's
Anyways,
like he's going off the deep end. Not like he's not going crazy. Just like he's done. He's kind of done football. Like you got to be in this, when you're in that mode of football and you're in that, like, I'm going
yeah.
for it. I'm grinding. I'm competing. I'm in that rare place that I'm in where athletically I'm not going to last. But while I'm here, I'm in that pocket. You saw Brady able to maintain that
Yeah.
pocket up to 45, right? Even when he wasn't getting success, he was still in that eye of the tiger, want it, every inch of it. I'll fight, scratch, claw. Like you said, he move his family. The commitment was there for him. You just don't feel that there. It's kind of like
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, does he even have what it takes to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion? So, and they had
no,
some pretty good teams with Green Bay a few years ago. So, and they couldn't get past it. So, that's all I'm gonna say.
yeah,
Um, Herbert ahead of Hurts. I'd put Burrow and Mahomes ahead, but not Burrow. Wait, Herbert ahead of Hurts. I'd put Burrow and Mahomes ahead, but not Burrow. Okay, okay. So Mahomes, Herbert, and Burrow ahead of Hurts. I think that's what he's saying.
yes, I put those three ahead of Hurts as well. But I'm not necessarily as high on Hurts as some others are with it.
That's actually a really, if you're still here, Joseph, that's a really good transition. Great transition, actually. Jalen Hurts. What do you think the Jalen Hurts contract extension will look like?
So if he signs this year, he's out of the third year of his deal. And if you're at through the third year of the deal at that point, you're able then to sign
Hmm.
him to the contract extension, but the money is going to be pretty high. If they wait the extra year, a la like what the Cowboys did with Dak or what the Ravens have done with Lamar, the longer you wait, the more the price is going to go up.
Hmm.
So this year he probably makes $45 million an average per year deal going forward. He's going to ask for, I'm sure, 50, but he probably gets 45 on average. And they massage the numbers through because they can use the last year of his rookie deal, right? Because he's under technically that final
Yeah.
non-exclusive tag, so to speak. So they can use that final year, bump down the base, have the bonus money, eat up the rest of the pop, and it's not going to hit as hard on that first year of the hit, but
Hmm.
the going rate's the going rate at this point. And if it'll be an interesting case study though, because here's my opinion: if I was the Eagles, I got 2 first
Yeah.
round picks in this draft. I think there's 4 quarterbacks worthy of being taken in the top 10. Right? See where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
I move for a first round pick. I package 2 of my first round picks up. I go get one of these quarterbacks. I continue to add on to this team with the other
Ooh.
first round pick, and I don't overthink this. But like I said, desperation and laziness. It's one of those two, sometimes both, that is applied in this decision making.
Okay. Wow. I've not seen that take before. So wait, so you're saying trade him? Trade Jalen Hurts or get a quarter? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's at an all-time high. It's just like it's the same thing that happened with like the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo when we first signed him to the contract. Like it's like you could trade him right now and get a pick, but there's also that thing of, well, what if he's really a great player and we trade him and he's a generational talent and now we've just made a huge mistake. So it's like, I think a lot of teams with these type of situations, it's going to happen with the Seahawks as well with Geno Smith. With these type of situations, a lot of teams are afraid of the risk that could happen. Like, what if we really miss out? What if we get rid of this person and then we draft this person and this person's way worse than the person that we got rid of? It's the same thing that happened with the 49ers and they got rid of DeForest Buckner and drafted what's his name? Kinlaw. That has not panned out at all. They should have. So it's the afraid of risk that I think a lot of teams are just running from, kind of.
But that's my thing on this, is that what they're doing in favor of that, worrying of that risk on the front end, is they're ignoring all of the risk on the back end here. And my argument is that it's an equivalency. Kyler Murray came up for a contract last year, and everybody now, well, they've got to give it to him. I mean, he's improved every year, and you got to give him money. You got to give it to him. Yeah, and the Cardinals themselves didn't want to give it to him.
Right.
I mean, they did not want to give it to him, to the point that they put studying clauses into the damn contract. They did not want to give it to him. And then they give it to him. Now he tears his ACL and they're hating that contract. The Deshaun Watson demanded on all the guaranteed money. As I say, we're at the height of the diva age. I want all the guaranteed money after all those allegations and after you trade for me. $250 million guaranteed, not a dime lost out of my pocket if I get suspended. How's that contract looking for the Browns now in retrospect? That Dak Prescott deal, which the Cowboys waited and held off. Why did they wait and hold off? Why did they not sign him after year 3 like Jalen Hurts right now? Because they didn't want to, because they knew he wasn't worth it, because they knew he was a product of the system. The question is not a matter of whether Jalen Hurts is a generational talent. It is whether or not he's a product of his system. He has one of the best offensive lines in the game. He's got a legitimate number one and at least one of the best number twos that you're going to find in the sport over on the other side. He's got an amazing tight end. He's got a defense that got 70 sacks on the season. Can another quarterback flourish in that environment? You better believe it. Should I have to, is Hurts carrying that team through? No. And I watched the same Eagles-Niner game you watched in that playoffs once Brock Purdy went down. The guy averaged 5 yards an attempt. What he's doing is he's Lamar Jackson, like with his legs, and they lean on that with all the kitschy stuff with the legs, which by the way, goes away fast, right? It did for Cam, right? Cam was done by 30. Done by 30.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson even now starting to have more injuries. If they keep running him like that, the injury is going to catch up to him for sure. So
you can't run like that. Like Wilson was a guy that always ran, but he always protected himself and got down. Those kind of cats are guys that run. Josh Allen's like this too, where they run and they don't get down and they take all these unnecessary hits and everybody lauds how impressively tough they are, but they're going to get broken. And guess what? Hurts got broken this year. It's not even talk about next year this happening. It happened this year with his elbow to the shoulder, where he was restricted. So again, what I say is that risk on the back end. What about the risk of paying a guy $45 million, inhibiting your roster in that way, missing out on the first round pick you could have gotten in return for him? And then now you don't get as far because you were scared about what if he goes on to be this? What if he goes on to be that? When he's not showing you that's what he is. He has arm limitations. Brock Purdy played great. He has arm limitations. If you can't watch the tape on Brock Purdy, I don't care about the 300 yards or everything else. If you're not watching it and saying there's some arm limitations here, it's not to say Brock doesn't have some good things, the mobility, the decision-making, the accuracy on the short stuff. It's not painting with the broad brush of saying they suck, but it's saying take into account the full totality of the player. Not just the good stuff, but also what about this other stuff that may hinder them or that we have to work around a little bit. And you're going to have to work around Jalen Hurts' arm. I watched it throughout the playoffs with the Eagles, because what happens with those arm limitations, guys, and you saw this with Garoppolo too, when it's summertime, when it's September, when it's early October and the weather's warm, they can still snap those balls off tight. You get him out into the weather,
Same with Allen.
We'll get him in the elements and everything starts to arm strength dips, accuracy dips, ball starts wobbling around there a little bit and you go, boy, man, they're having a hard time getting this ball pushed up the football field. And that's what I saw from Hurts in the playoffs. He had a great game in the Super Bowl. He's not a bad player, but you can't put him in the same reservoir of Herbert. I can't get in that same point of saying he's some top 4 or 5 quarterback in the sport when he's got to me, it's the supporting cast. That dictates so much of the quarterback performance here. And if you've got, it's why Burrow's so impressive to me, because they gave him jack crap as far as supporting cast goes. And the guy gets his ACL torn through, still doesn't have a very good offensive line. And he's still out there balling out of control. But otherwise he's the anomaly. Most guys get just kind of that's the opposite end of the scale. You have a really talented guy who just gets himself beat to hell because he's got crap coaching, crap supporting cast.
I think, what do you think of the Eagles coach? Because I think, like, well, for one, I'm going to say Jalen Hurts. This is why this next year for both Jalen Hurts and the Eagles coach, Nick Sirianni, is going to be such an important year, because it's like you are going to lose. Like, there's no way you're going to replace all of that talent in the draft. So you're going to lose a little bit of talent. Now, what can you do with a little bit less of a supporting cast? Like you said. And I'm just, especially with the coach, I think I still have, like, I think in that Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts, my doubts are like, okay, well, they definitely slimmed. I kind of owe Jalen Hurts a little bit of an apology, because I didn't think he was very good early on in the season. He didn't play very good defenses, but he proved me wrong in the playoffs. But for me, the coach kind of I still haven't let the coach off the hook, Nick Sirianni off the hook. I think this year is going to be a huge year for Nick Sirianni to really show how good of a coach he is. And in the same way for kind of Jalen Hurts, he's going to have a lesser supporting cast. Let's see if you can do it, Patrick Mahomes. Because the thing with Patrick Mahomes, the reason why he's such a great quarterback is because all the doubters were against him this year with losing Tyreek Hill, and he still was able to go produce really good numbers. So if Hurts is really in that tier, which I don't think he is, but if he's really in that tier, he needs to prove it this year with probably a lesser supporting cast.
Well, I think he's going to not necessarily be challenged in the way you're saying, though, because the lesser supporting cast is going to come off the defensive side of the ball, right? Brandon Graham likely to be out. Fletcher Cox, they're probably going to lose him. Bradbury,
Right.
you're going to lose him. Ndamukong Suh, you're going to lose him. Quinn, you'll lose him.
Yeah, that's true.
That's your only guys, though, you're losing defensively. If we go to the offensive side of the ball, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown are still going to be there. I wouldn't really count Miles Sanders as a huge loss in free agency.
Replaceable.
He's replaceable. And that offensive line remains intact as long as Kelsey doesn't retire. And that offensive line is the driver of that team every bit as the defensive line was the driver of the team and what they're able to do offensively, because they make defenses pick their poison. If you don't bring the eighth man in the box, then they're going to hit you with the running game. Once you bring the eighth man in the box, now they can run those 9 routes to AJ and Devontae over the top, and it becomes the pick the poison situation.
Absolutely.
So that still remains next year. And take this as what if they did this as another route with this, by the way? What if they hold on to Hurts, they pick top 13, I think it is in this draft, and they take Bijan Robinson, the guy that's made the best back that we've seen in this draft in the last 4 years, at least in Saquon,
from Alabama.
probably even further. No, that's Jahmyr Gibbs. This is
Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay, sorry.
No, this is no, it's good. It's Texas kid.
Texas.
He's
yeah. I've heard of him. Yeah, really good. He freaking steamroller. Yeah,
best running back in the draft by far. Best prospects in Saquon. Probably better than Saquon. He's LaDainian Tomlinson like. So what if now they upgrade the running back position? Is what I'm saying. And okay, you lose a little bit of defensive talent, but now your offense is just a well-oiled machine that's an unstoppable rebel force. That's another way. They also are going to get some development from the young guys they got last year. They drafted a linebacker. They got that Jordan Davis kid out of Georgia last year in the first round. He didn't have to do a whole lot because the rotation was kind of set up in front of him with the guys that they had. So, I think that they're still going to be one of the cream of the crop teams next year, kind of regardless of what happens with the Hurts situation. Though you're right, they do lose. They're going to drain some of the defensive talent. Brandon Graham still remains solid for them and whatnot. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. You kind of proved me wrong, because I was just looking at the free agents. I was like, oh, they're losing 18 free agents. And I'm like, dang, there's not going to be as much talent. But now that I think about it, you're very right on that point. So, but Joseph Camperman, my brother, if you don't know, is an Eagles fan. So I did not tell you that before. I did not prepare you. They should sign him to a 10-year backloaded contract. They can't wait longer because he is a free agent next year. I kind of agree with that, because like Patrick Mahomes, they signed him to a $50 million. They keep restructuring that, and it's 10 years. And now that deal is looking really good as the quarterback market continues to go up and up.
Can I say what's his last comment? Go really quick back to his last comment, though.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to pay him. I mean, like, look, I get that this is the other thing where like they're going to squawk and everything, but let's break this down. He plays on next year's contract. He's going to make probably like $4.5 million on that last year of his rookie deal. Okay, he's a free agent next year, but is he really? He's going to get franchise tagged. Franchise tag right now is $32 million this offseason for a quarterback, because I know we got Geno, right? Next year, that means it's going to be about 34 is what it will go up to approximately. So you can have Jalen Hurts right now on a 2-year deal at $40 million, or you can spend right now at $45 million per year on a 4-year deal on up.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. That's a good point. That's something to think about. I can't see trading Hurts. He's an incredible quarterback and better than the four in the draft. He's talking about the top four, I think. He isn't crazy good yet, but he isn't crazy good yet, but better than these rookies. I tend to agree. I think
think
Stroud.
there's a reason he went at the end of the second round. There's a reason that
True.
he couldn't beat out Tua at Alabama. And Tua is not exactly the golden arm talent, right? It wasn't because he
Yeah.
got into somehow Nick Saban's doghouse. Tua beat him out at the position. It wasn't because he got a magical injury. Like I like Hurts. So Joseph, please don't take it like I don't like Hurts as a player. But as I said,
Yeah.
I'm very, and maybe this is my own little pet thing with this. I'm really right now into properly evaluating quarterbacks and not getting lost in the forest despite the trees. And in the case of Hurts, if you're not looking at that supporting cast and looking at other quarterbacks in the league and the supporting cast that they're lacking, which is leading to their failures, and how that can
Yeah.
be the equivalent on the opposite end of the scale. I think that's the place where teams get lost in that, and even fans can get lost in that. And as Hurts, as well as he played this year, if he doesn't have his legs, if he goes down and he's got a high ankle sprain in week 4 because you've got him out there running like a running back at every turn,
Yeah.
and now he's got to be a pocket passing quarterback, you still feel good about him, Joseph? You still think that's a guy sitting back there hitting his back foot, letting it rip, and being timely and putting a 15-yard post route on a dime consistently with that? And that's to me the issue when you're not mobile. Quarterbacks are great. The mobile quarterbacks who run like Lamar, who run like Cam, who run like Allen, those are the ones that I worry about because it's one hit away. And when you talk about them being rookies like they're doing right now, or like Ravens did with Lamar, completely support it. I love that. That's a great, like, honestly, isn't it kind of an interesting strategy to go, look, we don't want to pay a quarterback. Let's get the rookie, squeeze out every last bit of drop that there is in that sponge, and then let him be on his way and let somebody else make the mistake of paying that guy as he's about to break
Interesting. Down. Wow. Yeah. So maybe they trade him. I don't know. I wanted to ask you though, because you definitely are into quarterbacks and into the draft. What if the Eagles maybe were to get this quarterback? What do you think of that Florida quarterback?
Yeah. Bingo, Joe. We're right
on
on the same spot. Your brother's going to hate this because you're agreeing with me here on this. We're exactly thinking simpatico. I don't know,
like,
here.
Here's the
thing.
No,
you're on the right path. Stay with it. Don't turn on your brother now.
Here's the thing though, because like you bring up some like really good points that like I had never thought about before. So that's why I'm asking you about this Florida quarterback, because I saw this ranking today and it said and I didn't know this, but he said he was the best quarterback in the draft. And I did not know this. I thought the best quarterback was the Alabama quarterback. But what do you think about him?
He is the most purely talented quarterback in the draft. If you wanted to replicate what Lamar's done with the Ravens or what the Eagles have done with Hurts here and do the same kind of system where wash, rinse, repeat, guys out of his rookie deal, get assets for him, bring in the next guy to run the show exactly the same way. By that, I mean a lot of read option stuff, a lot of easy throws, a lot of stuff not requiring him to necessarily be under center, dropping back, running through 3 reads, and then letting it rip somewhere. The one issue with him is that he's very raw. He came out a year early. He's very young. He's not played a lot of football. But if you're manufacturing things like you would do for the Hurts, Lamar Jackson types, then you can get around that stuff because you're not asking him to do the full-fledged stuff of what a quarterback would do. But that's okay because you're not asking Hurts to do that with this offense. So again, it's very much to me one where you can have that guy come in and hit the ground running. They come up and they move up to us at 5. They go and we get 13, and then we get one of their other first round picks and maybe a second or third round kicker or something. They come up and then now those other quarterbacks are off the board. They get Richardson, who's the most purely talented guy, and they're okay with that. To me, I think that's kind of an intelligent approach. Oh, and by the way, at that point, you still got one more first round pick, Eagle fan. Joseph, you still got one more pick after moving up and getting that guy in Anthony Richardson. You still have a first round pick that you get for Hurts, which is probably going to be a pretty decent first round pick for him at that point.
Right.
Probably at least a teens.
Yeah. Very good point. I will say, going back to Jalen Hurts real quick before we move on, because we've spent a while on this, but I just go back to like the first quarter in that NFC Championship game. And it's like the 49ers were making him play pocket quarterback. That seemed like it was going to be a good game if Purdy wouldn't have gotten injured. They were making him play pocket quarterback. Was not as, I don't know. It just, when he was solely in the pocket, definitely limited a lot of the things he was able to do. And But yeah, I will look more into that Florida quarterback because I haven't gotten too much into the draft, but I need to look into him because I saw some highlights from him. And I mean, this guy was throwing in the pocket, sidearm, 30-yard dimes. Like, so really talented,
He's going to go
really
top
talented
10.
quarterback.
He's going to go top 10. Hurts went at the end of the second round. And as I said,
Okay.
Hurts didn't go to the end of the second round because NFL teams were blind and just didn't understand his true talent, or they knew what, if I draft this guy, I got to do a Lamar-like offense around him. Not a lot of teams want to sign up to do that. Why do you have to do the Lamar offense around him? For the same reason that you have to do the Lamar offense around Lamar,
Yeah.
because he has arm limitations. It's not that he can't make certain throws like a 9 route. It's not that there isn't stuff that certain throws Hurts can make. It's just that if you're talking about every NFL throw you'd like a guy to make, back foot, let it rip on a line, 15 yards on time, on a spot, that's just not his game necessarily. And so
Right.
but that is something Anthony Richardson can do, because Anthony's got a great arm talent. He's got as strong as arm as just about anybody in this draft, and it's accurate. It's just a matter of him with seasoning and maturing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens on this. A little bit of the comments. No offense taken. This is fun. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thank you, by the way, for all your knowledge, because, wow, giving us a lot of... I'm more of a 49ers guy. I go a little bit outside of the frame. I obviously around the draft start to look at prospects, but not as much. It's crazy how much knowledge you have. Space says, go Hawks.
What's up, Space?
Don't like that, but anyways. So yeah, let's move on though. Taylor Lewan was cut. This is the last topic of the day. Taylor Lewan was cut from the Titans. A big part of that was, I think they thought, I mean, he's 31 years old. He's had 2 torn ACLs, kind of on his last legs, only really has a couple more years, but is a 3-time Pro Bowler. I think the big reason why the Titans signed him, cut him, was because they're under the cap and they need to get rid of a lot of, they need to get rid of some players to kind of get over that cap space. And I think they thought he was kind of an expendable player because he's had so many injuries and because he's so old. Is expendable the right word?
That's right on. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. So anyways, so Taylor Lewan just got cut by the Titans. That's what I just said. But your top 3 teams that could sign him in the NFL.
Well, I do think he's going to try to go to a contender, obviously, because he doesn't have a lot of time left. I would be really worried about signing him, quite honestly. I'm sure you're looking at potentially the fit with him there, because you're anticipating you're not going to be able to re-sign Mike McGlinchey, which you're not going to be able to, because
he's a left tackle though, right? Lewan.
He's going to go to right though. The knee is, I'm guessing he's not going to move like he once did before. And the left guys go to right as they wear down. A lot of times they'll go to the right side because the right side doesn't require you to go against the blind side rushers as much. You're going against more of the power guys. So if you have a little bit less of an inability to move at that point, it's okay. And with him, I would guess, I would be really worried about Lewan if I was in that respect of things. But yes, he's a potential guy that could flip to the Niners and you move him to the right side because of that. But the double ACL on the same knee, like OBJ's had, I just picture like a frayed like ligaments and like,
at
like
that point,
they
what is even there?
That's what I'm saying. Like it's, and he already had issues before on the last one. I remember him talking about it on his show about having issues with getting recovery going and like the knees swelling up on him all the time. And, I was never a big Lewan guy anyway, really, to be honest with you. It was just, even when he's back being drafted, he was kind of known as like a fake tough guy type coming out of college. It was his whole kind of MO. He really acts like he's a, whatever, but, top 3 teams, it does depend on if he's going to transition, I think, to left or right. And if he had that issue before with the knee, you would think that the recovery time would be even longer now. But with that said, there's always teams that need the left tackle out there, right? So I guess let's go with let's go with the Cowboys potentially, because I think they want to get Tyler Smith into guard, and then that would let him do that. I know he played left tackle, but I think his best spot's going to eventually be guard for them, and they'd like to get that line rebuilt. I know they would with Jerry Jones, get it back to being a strength again. So that'd be team 1. Team 2, how about Indianapolis? Those teams always tend to pluck each other's guys in the division. We've done it with you guys. You've done it with us.
Now, he did come out and say in a recent interview, and I read an article about this, that he would never go to an AFC South
Okay.
opponent.
Well, then he's being a loyal, still
I
a loyal
actually
soldier then on that one. I
now if
would.
they offer him enough money, I'm sure he will. But
Who's gonna offer money though? That's the thing is I
that's
can't see
true.
anybody willing with that knee. But I do think your Niners are because the knee is going to lower his cost. If he was
Yep.
healthy, I'd say your Niners don't have a chance. But I think they're one of the top 3 teams here because McGlinchey does go. Shanahan's going to want to keep the unit strong. I think you guys are still down a first round pick this year, or do you guys get it back?
Yeah, we
Still down.
still are kind of still hurting us a little bit. Hopefully Trey pounds out, but
And that's a late second rounder that you got then where you're first picking at. Boy, the tackles are going to be off the board, my man, at that point.
no, it's actually I think it's late third.
Late, oh, geez. Yeah, you're not
We
getting
have
it.
3 third-round picks,
Yeah.
which are basically all comp picks, and then
I
we have
know.
like 3 fifths, 3 sixes, and 2 sevenths or something like that. So a
Lot of work.
lot of late round picks.
A lot of late round picks. And you know what sucks about it too about this draft is it's a weak draft. Like
Yeah.
it's a naturally weak draft, and that it would be that way coming in absent anything else. But then the NIL came in like a mobster with a baseball bat and just kneecapped whatever was remaining. You got like
Yeah.
28 guys who went back to school off a weak draft. And so now it's
Yeah.
like by the time you get to third, fourth, fifth round, it's gonna be you're walking through the salvage yard looking for a tire basically at that
Well,
point.
I think there's this I follow the Michigan Wolverines because Harbaugh went there. I always liked him. And what's his name? The running back from there, Blake Corum. I'm sure you've heard of him, but I think
Yep.
he went back
He did.
too. He
Yep.
did. So but yeah, I have the article actually right here. Lewan said on Barstool Sports podcast while referring Tennessee's division rivals in the Jacksonville Jaguars, Indianapolis Colts, and Houston Texans, I would not go play for an AFC South team. So he's on record saying that, which I don't know. My top 3 teams, though, did you name your third one or?
I don't think I named a third one. I was sitting on the fence on that one.
Okay.
I guess let's go just to give maybe a name on it. Let's go Tampa Bay because they're going to probably have to cut Donovan Smith to get themselves under the cap because they're in the worst cap space right now.
Okay. So, but real quick before we kind of get into my top 3, silly fun guy, go Rams. He is a Rams fan. Do you know who Payo Time is?
Mm-mm.
He's a Rams content creator. Go look him up. But he's kind of a subscriber of his channel, and he drops into my streams once in a while. So what's up, silly fun guy? Anyways, so my top 3, I got Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Dan Moore, I mean, he played better this year, but I think Lewan would be an upgrade, I guess, at left tackle. That's another one. So I think, and if you're the Steelers, they've never had a very good offensive line. You're Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett actually went out with a concussion last year, and so you kind of have to protect him. I mean, I don't know. That could be a team. New England Patriots, they allowed 54 sacks in 17 games. That's one of the lowest, and they were one of the worst offensive lines throughout the year. So I would say New England Patriots there. Again, Lewan, I mean, he's not going to be going for very many picks. Well, very much money.
You think Belichick would be on board with bussing with the boys?
Interview, baby. I'll give you an interview if you pick me up on your team.
I don't want to sign him. He's going to do that stupid show and his bus at other facilities. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't sign him. I don't want to sign him. No.
I'm sure you do not like Bill Belichick. He's caused you too much pain.
No, I appreciate him. He's I love how he's just everything's just with him, just like he just got out of bed, He's just like, what do you want me? What do you want to know? I don't know. But no, he's a great coach, but he also has a guy I think that doesn't have has a certain type of player that must be in there to fit with him, and anything kind of coloring outside the lines, I think he's kind of like, nah, not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree with that. I think ever since Tom Brady left, I've kind of a little bit lost respect for him. But yeah, my third team is going to be the Saints. I think if they can get over the cap, they're going to need as many cheap players that are decent as possible because they can't afford anybody big. So I think the Saints is a main team. He could very likely go
Trevor
to that
Penning?
one. True. Yeah, that's a good.
I'm not trying to crap on your deal.
No.
He was their first. They traded like an extra first last year to get him.
He's their left tackle, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was injured a lot of the season. So, I mean, I get where you're going with it on, but he wasn't like good
Yeah.
for them or anything. But they did put a lot of resources, and the right side's kind of stabilized with them because they've got
Ramchek. Yeah.
is the
So
right tackle, I believe.
that's kind of one. Maybe add him in if nobody wants him, add him in for depth. I don't think he's going to be a wave. I think he's going to be like a wave 2, like 3rd, 4th day of free agency.
Yeah.
So we could see that. I kind of already asked you this the other day. A few like 30 minutes ago, is Bobby coming back to Seattle?
I hope to God he is. I didn't understand why we cut him in the first place, to be honest with you. So he just had a pretty great season with the Rams, and we really need middle linebacker help right now. And this draft sucks for middle linebackers. So that worked for me. I would do it.
He definitely has roots here. Probably still has a house there too. So
yeah, he wants to come back home. He does. He's a Hawk. So it was a weird situation to release him in the first place because he was a guy talking at the end of the year about being willing to restructure. You didn't have exactly stalwarts. We didn't have a Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner embedded behind him. You know what I mean? It was kind of empty behind him. So why, if he's willing to restructure and he's still playing pretty decently, like until you have a real true replacement. But the team was way higher in Jordan Brooks than I was, so they wanted to get Brooks in there, I guess.
Yeah. I feel you there. Definitely, it wasn't his choice. You guys cut him, right? Was it you? Yeah. You had to get, because last year you had to get over the cap, right?
No,
under the
we
cap.
just did it. We just did it cold blood. Like we're moving on from Russ, so we might as well move on from Bobby too. That seems to be the whole. I mean, what you did is you set yourself up for this a couple of years ago because 2 years prior you had taken a 3rd round pick on Cody Barton, and you had put a 1st round pick on Jordan Brooks. And then you had played Jordan Brooks for the first 2 years as a will linebacker in a 4-3 defense, which was outside of his natural position, which was a true middle linebacker in a 4-3. Problem is that Jordan Brooks, neither Jordan or Cody Barton are true 3-4 inside linebackers. It's not ubiquitous, right? A middle linebacker in a 4-3 can't necessarily just absolutely play into a 3-4 middle linebacker. There's different duties you ask of those guys within those defenses. For instance, a 3-4 middle linebacker is going to have way more action coming down on him at the second level. So he's probably got to be a little bit more rooted up, rocked up a little bit and be able to take on a little bit of those second level guys, because it's going to happen more when you got the front four up there, especially with our old defense, which was a 4-3 under, where we had a de facto 5-man front. That's why we're so tough against Shanahan for years. He wants to run the ball. We'd run a de facto 5-man front. That's just naturally going to be difficult for offenses to pull that off. But now we've gone to the 3-4. So it was the Jordan Brooks pick. You played him out of position for 2 years. He's a 1st rounder. You're chomping at the bit, but Jordan's not. The problem with Jordan is he can't cover a blanket. So that's the issue there. I mean, you guys beat the hell out of us with Jordan in coverage last year in just about every game. I think you guys went at him pretty good. Shanahan's definitely aware of his liabilities.
Yeah. I would say that like every game got closer. Like the first game was like 27-7. The second game was like, and we were transitioning quarterbacks in the first game because Trey Lance went out. And then the second game was a little bit closer. They kind of came back at the end. Third game was really close in the first half. I don't know. I look forward to it because I think if the Seahawks can get more talent, obviously we had a lot more talent last year, but if the Seahawks can continue to build, it's going to be a fun little thing that we have between each other for the next few years.
It'll be good. So, especially it looks like the Rams are in kind of cap hill, draft pick hell. The Cardinals can't get right. I don't know did you see the player? If you want to laugh, by the way, go watch. Did you see the interactions the Cardinal coach had with the players? Like the one-on-ones?
Yes.
Pew, 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 shots. I watched that I watched that 5 or 10 times. I watched that way too much. I was laughing so hard at that. That guy is so corny, and he is not going to work. That is
I know, and I'm saying that too. I'm saying that too. Like, it's so funny because, like, I heard the other day that, like, the Cardinals are going to college football programs and basically just rating the heck out of, like, the assistant coaches on those teams. Like, I think Northwestern, I think they got one from Florida as well. Like, they're going to all these different college football teams because no NFL coaches want to, like, be with that staff. They're going to all these college football teams. It's not going to work. You have a coach, you have a quarterback who's not controlling, but you have a quarterback who anytime I said this a few days ago, anytime you have a quarterback who you're trying to fit the needs of the quarterback, it's never going to work. You should always be trying to fit the needs of the coach. So,
you talked a lot about the FOMO people have about with in regards to their coach with regards to the quarterback, and that they got to get their quarterback because they're worried about if we let him go and he becomes something else, then look how stupid that we look. But as I said, the way that knife cuts both ways, and the other side of that cut is, okay, now you're trapped with the quarterback. But now we're seeing organizations like you just talked about with Arizona, or is also with Denver, right? Denver didn't have a line of coaches that wanted that job. Sean Payton didn't just immediately jump on that job. He interviewed, and then there was a little bit of a dance that occurred for about a month between the two parties. I think partly because he wanted them to be insured of the fact that I'm not married to Russell when I come here. If I come here and this don't work, I get to ship him out and rerun this through the way I see fit.
Right.
And the Cardinals weren't going to be willing to give any coach probably out there that kind of assurance. And that's how you end up with the chap-lipped pew, pew, pew guy, and a staff full of college coaches. That's how you get there. And this is the problem with thinking that you got to pay those guys, is that think about it, think really long and hard whether or not that's the right choice, because you could be putting yourself into a position of some real hardship down the road. That's not just simply, oh, well, it's the contract we can't get out of. Oh, can you bring the coach in that you need to run the team?
Yeah. He wasn't even their first option. They interviewed like 6 people. So,
yeah. Nobody wanted, you're right. Nobody wanted the job. Nobody wanted that Denver job. Yeah, they were begging.
Yeah.
They were begging people like D'Amico Ryans was like, no, I'll take the Texans.
They paid Sean Payton everything.
All of it.
Everything.
All the Walmart money. They gave him a store. They gave him a couple of stores.
Yes.
That's what got that deal done, was the assurance that he's not married to Russell. Because you're listening to Payton talk, and he's like, I didn't come here for Russell. Like he just come out and has said it. Like he ain't even trying to be like low key with it. So there's that. And then they gave him more money than any other coach is going to make in the NFL. So for him to go through this rebuild stuff to try to reclamate Russell, like, oh, I couldn't make it work. Who could have seen this coming? On to the next,
Yeah. Well, definitely an interesting situation there. Joseph Camperman, Eagles fan, says, praise God, Gannon is gone. And then Space says, do you think Purdy will be the starter next season? Personally,
I got a question for you for Space. That's a great question, by the way. I do want to know Space's answer to the question, but what do you think about the way they used Trey Lance last year?
I hated it. Now, here's the thing. They've come out and said or hinted that Trey Lance didn't know enough of the complicated Kyle Shanahan system to, to run a proper throwing system. And that was their main excuse for running him all the time. I don't really buy it. I kind of do, but he got all of the first team reps in training camp last year, and he had a year and a half to sit and learn. So, I mean, maybe was kind of the case, but I hated the way, Kyle Shanahan's had a history of doing this with running quarterbacks, Robert Griffin. So, I don't know. I hated it. If he does it again with Trey Lance this season.
Did you see the soundbite of him talking about that it was an interview given before Lance, and it was some random interview he gave about running quarterbacks up the middle and then not being able to see the hits coming? Go look it up, man. It will infuriate the hell out of you, because when you watch it, you're like, oh, so we just don't take our own advice? Because this wasn't post Lance. It's an interview he's giving before the Lance situation happened. And it was like, and I remember I was like, showed up on my Twitter account. So all these Niner fans were just like, Jesus, they're like,
yeah.
Oh, so we just, do we get amnesia? Kyle, like what happened? I thought it was the most ridiculous thing. He was driving the team up the field. So what are you going to take the first game when he's playing in a monsoon? And that was the evaluation. Like, why don't you show me with him failing before you tell me he fails?
Right? I completely agree. Yeah. And there's some fans that are like, I don't know. I wouldn't be completely. Did you have anything else to say? Or I was.
Oh, no, it's an interesting discussion. I see the Niner fans turning this one over in a big way. And I kind of don't understand. I talked to Jesse about this a lot too. It's just like, dude, and he's implying, I don't get the whole thing with the bailing out on Lance like this.
Yeah.
You're drafting this guy who was the youngest guy coming out of the draft, hadn't played a year, coming out of the great year of production that he had in college. He was going to take time. This is a little bit like the Anthony Richardson thing. It's like, you just got to draft the guy knowing it's going to take a little bit of time. So have some patience. This is year 2. You think with some of these Niner fans, it's like he was in year 7 with them and he's never done jack for him throughout that whole time period.
Yeah.
And I can't understand it. I literally I look at it from afar going, I don't get it. You know, you guys might have your guy here, you know, you should be yelling at your coach not to run quarterback power up the middle. Those are it's the most ridiculous play call for a quarterback. If you're going to run a quarterback, get him to the edges. If that's what you really want to get to do, read option, get to the edge where he can control the action.
Their thing though with that is he's not fast enough to get to the edges because he's not like a Justin Fields. And my thing is like, okay, I mean, you can do that 3 times a game, maybe up the middle, that type of stuff, but they were doing it like 8, 9 times a game.
So he can't run the Purdy offense? I mean,
yeah, exactly. And
it.
it was pretty vanilla. I mean, I don't know. Purdy
didn't do it like the thing. Like Purdy played really well and he was efficient. He made great decision making, but he wasn't executing things at a super high level. He's got a lot of talent around him. Lance is going to have a lot of talent around him, and he'll succeed with it.
And even in that monsoon with the Bears, like he had some good throws, and it wasn't his fault that they lost. Deebo Samuel fumbled on, I think, the first drive we were driving, and then the whole game just went to. I mean, we got up after that point, but the defense failed. Would not say that's his fault. Yeah, and it was bad. I mean, the whole field was underwater.
It's like having snow like 8 inches on the ground. Like it's going to level the field talent-wise instantaneously and become a luck game at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Space, to answer your question, I don't know. If I think the surgery is going to have to depend on it. He hasn't had that yet. And they're going to look back at the swollen arm in March and see if it's good to operate on. Because the reason why they haven't operated on it yet is it's inflamed. You've probably heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he'll maybe be able to come back for week 1. But if he doesn't, I mean, this is great. Trey Lance, you're telling me that he comes back week 1 and Purdy hasn't had any of the first team reps in training camp. And they're going to basically just insert him into the lineup and as a starting quarterback. So I think Trey Lance is absolutely going to be the starter week 1. And I don't know about further, but I think for at least the first few weeks of the season. And I mean, I think it's going to be a true battle because if Lance can play well, and like I said before, you're telling me that Purdy can just come in and automatically do this when he's had no reps all offseason because of his arm. I just don't think so. And another thing to bring up is Nick Mullins. There's actually only 2 quarterbacks that have had this type of injury. Both quarterbacks are from the 49ers.
Dak had it too. Not to this,
really?
not to the significant degree that it's more significant with Purdy. Like you said, the swelling that's there is more persistent than it was with Dak because they could just calm Dak down through a training camp, have him not throw. This is going to probably be surgery time for him.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so anyways, Nick Mullins, another quarterback who wasn't as good as Purdy, but he had this injury a few years ago, I think in 2020, and his arm was not the same since then. So Purdy hasn't had a lot of arm strengths to begin with. You're telling me, I don't know. It's gonna be tough. Uphill battle for him. So.
Big time. In baseball, when they do it, they get the Tommy John and they actually come back with increased RPMs. So maybe it works opposite in football, but that's the weird thing with baseball is those guys will usually come back and it gives them an extra couple bits. But I know on football where you get it's different thing with throwing the football than baseball on that. So it's odd. It's an unusual injury too. It doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, real quick, Space, where will Rodgers end up? We already answered that. So when the show ends, just skip back towards the section on Aaron Rodgers. And also quick announcement. Well, not announcement, but don't forget when this show ends, I'll be adding chapters to it. So if you want to skip to a certain part, that will be in the description as well. Before we go, Brandon, tell them where they can find your channel. And also tell them what you do, a little bit of a description of yourself.
Yeah, I'm the Hawk's Nest on YouTube. It should come up with a relatively quick search out there.
Link in the description.
I just cover it's an everything Seahawks channel. So we definitely do news. A lot of live stream shows are kind of at the forefront. So I do 2 live stream shows a week on Wednesday and Sunday. We usually go pretty long on that. And then I do a lot of little video content in between, sometimes historical stuff, sometimes just look at the team all around the world on it. But always kicking out good content on the consistent basis over there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for just coming on and giving us an hour and a half of your time. That's
my pleasure.
Really
I had
generous.
a great time talking with you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of great to see, like all the knowledge you bring to the game in every aspect. So thank you everyone for watching. Have a very good night, and we will either see you on Saturday on the Camper Report with another guest, or next Wednesday. We'll see you guys later. Go Niners, and I guess for this case,
Go Hawks.
you can say go. Yeah.
I was
Anyways, we'll see
listening
you
in.
guys later.